Well, without further ado, the senator from South Dakota, John Thune, welcome to the Dennis Miller Show.
Great to be with you, Andrew. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I like it. Cut, cap, and balance. I'm from L.A. I need something catchy.
Yeah.
Was that your handiwork?
Well, it wasn't mine, but you guys out there in the showbiz community, we want to show our creativity and give everybody something to latch on to. But I think it captures what we need to do in a very straightforward way.
Okay, did you hear my introduction? Because I'm looking at this thing from historical GDP, what percentage of GDP, and we're now pushing 25% or something like that when it's historically been more around 18%. It certainly was 18% under President Clinton. Is that what we're trying to get back to, that this is a spending problem, not a revenue problem?
Absolutely, and what we have to recognize is that the dramatic increase that we've seen in spending as a percentage of our total economy, and just in the last few years, we can't sustain that and assume that the private economy is going to be able to create jobs and get back its growth. We continue to grow the size of government. What we ought to be doing is looking at making government smaller, not larger. That, to me, is how you deal with a debt crisis, and that's why the balanced budget amendment, the cut, cap, and balance proposal all attempt to try to get us back to a more historical pattern and average when it comes to spending as a percentage of our total economy.
I read a stunning article in Forbes yesterday by Richard Miniter that kind of put this thing into perspective, because you're going to try and send this. This is going to be sent to Harry Reid's Senate right now, and from everything I'm reading, he does not want that. You guys don't have the votes in the Senate right now to pass this thing. And his argument in his article, he's basically saying that the Democratic Party, as we know it over the last 50 years, is going to have to fundamentally change over the next 50 years. And all of this radical spending, which makes almost no sense to the average middle-class person out there, all this increase in spending is because the Democratic Party is feeding its many constituencies who are dependent upon the growth of government. Is that there's just not any money left. So at a certain point, we're just going to be hitting a wall where we no longer have this money. So he's saying that the Democratic Party, as we know it, is going to eventually have to rethink its entire reason for being.
Well, that's been there. If you look at the Democrats, when they've had control of Congress, they've looked at creating new entitlement programs, expanding the welfare state, and we're faced now with having to pay for it. And so, you even look at last year, the passage of the health care reform bill, which creates a whole new entitlement program, and it included in it a long-term care entitlement program called the Class Act, which is completely unsustainable. And what the Democrat administrations and former Congresses have done is have been intent on believing, and this is a difference in philosophy and ideology, that government is the answer. And so they believe in a more expansive role for the government. And conservatives believe that we ought to keep government small and allow the private economy to be the job creator and the driving force in our economy. And if government spending was the answer, the $1 trillion that the president put into the stimulus program last year would have driven the unemployment rate down. But as we all know, unemployment now is even higher than it was before. That's clearly not the answer, Andrew. And I think what we're trying to do here with the balanced budget amendment, with cut, cap, and balance, is recognize that our country's greatness is that we believe in a limited role for the federal government, not growing government to where we end up being in the image of a Western European social democracy. That's not where we want to be. Our country is unique for a reason, and it is because we believe in a limited role for the government.
Well, I understand that philosophically, but how can we state with $14 trillion in debt and all the different things that we're spending our money on, all these different programs, how can we even state that's where we are philosophically if we're conservative? But we're not there. We are spending money on all of these different social programs, and we now have Obamacare. What are we going to do about Obamacare? I mean, is that to me, if you're the Tea Party, and I believe they're dormant, but I believe that they're going to come back, and whether you like it or not, they're going to be there in the year 2012. What is the Republican response right now to Obamacare, and is that dealt with in cut, cap, and balance?
Well, our view is that the best thing we can do is repeal it entirely, because once you start implementing this thing, or you take shot or a rifle shot approach to it, you can strip out pieces of it, but this thing needs to be repealed because it's just wrong for the country. It's going to increase insurance costs, health care costs for people in this country, which we're already seeing. Health insurance premiums are up 19% since this president took office, despite his assertions when he was running for office that he was going to lower health insurance costs for families across this country. But it's because, I mean, and you ask, what are we doing about it? Well, this is our attempt. Now, granted, we don't control the White House, we don't control the Senate, but we're doing everything we can to start reining government in. And the only way you can do that is you've got to take on these entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, which represent about 55 to 60% of total federal spending, and that only grows over time. So all these things that have been created by past Democrat administrations that continue to suck more and more of our resources up have got to be reformed. And that is where there is right now a big difference between Republicans and Democrats in Congress, is we believe that that's how you solve this problem. Democrats insist on keeping these programs intact, and they're unwilling to change them. And you've got to change them, or they will bankrupt the country. There's just absolutely no question about it. It's a matter of math.
Well, I've been out there in the country going to these tea parties. I didn't expect that was going to be part of my life for the last 2 years. It just started to happen. I started to talk to these people, and we had an interesting 2 years, and it was combative. The mainstream media instinctively didn't take a liking to this group of people that said, let's start being fiscally responsible and return to constitutional values. And it was very combative, very, very, very combative. They were called racist, sexist, homophobic for saying cut spending. I'm recommending to the Tea Parties when I go and talk to them now, I said, hey, let's make that water under the bridge. Let's try and find some constructive, avenues of agreement with Democrats right now. They may have called us all these things. The press may have been awful, but in between 2010 and 2012 and going into the election cycle, we need to start coming up with solutions now that we have some Tea Party-minded, fiscally conservative people in the government. What do you think we can do to reach out to reasonable Democrats in order to make them realize that we're serious about this, and this isn't a partisan issue, this is about saving the country?
Well, I hope there are Democrats across the country and independents who recognize that. And I think that's what has animated the Tea Party movement, is people have come to the conclusion that government's gotten too big, it's grown too fast, it's spinning out of control, and they're very worried about what that means for their children and grandchildren. And I don't think that is just a Republican phenomenon. I think that's something that there's attracted people from all different political persuasions. But it's going to take that kind of grassroots energy, that kind of grassroots movement, and people like your listeners out there have got to be engaged in this process, putting pressure on their elected officials to make the hard decisions that are necessary to get our country back on track. Absent that, we'll continue down on the trajectory that we're on. Because people in Washington need to hear when they feel the heat, they see the light, and I think that's what we've got to do, is make more politicians in Washington see the light. We have got to change the way we're doing things. We cannot continue down this path, or we're headed for a train wreck. I mean, it's just inevitable, and so I hope that the Tea Party people out there, whatever their political persuasion, recognize that it's not just this is, and granted, there have been plenty of Republicans and Democrats who've contributed to getting where we are, and it's going to take both to get us out of this situation, but it's going to be people who are willing to say, we have got to get government spending under control. We can't solve this debt crisis that we're in by increasing the size of government. We need to make government smaller, not larger.
Let's change the subject to the President of the United States. He obviously wants tax increases right now, and he's seen a 9+% unemployment in this country when he was worried about an 8% unemployment rate. Do you think that he's just so philosophically not of a mindset that understands that that's going to hinder job growth? Do you think that he just exists on such a different philosophical plane? What could his thinking be if he thinks that tax increases is going to help the job environment out there?
I think he is. I mean, I think the president, by and large, he's a good person. He just has a different view about what the role of government ought to be. I mean, he believes in a very expansive role for the government. The government is a problem solver. Government has the answers. And I think that's why, as part of his prescription for dealing with the crisis right now, is growing government by increasing taxes. You know, when you increase taxes, you're basically saying we don't think government has enough revenue. And I happen to believe government's got plenty of revenue. What government has is a spending problem, as you pointed out in your introductory comments about the growth and the size of government as a percentage of our total economy. You look at the 40-year average, it's about 20.6%. These next few years, we're in the 24 to 25% range. We are growing government dramatically. We've got to rein it in. The way you do that is by getting spending under control. And so the only thing that raising revenue has done historically, whenever we've had these big budget deals which have included tax increases, is the tax increases stay. The spending cuts never occur, and government just gets bigger. And so I think that the president, he is, he comes by his views. Honestly, he is what he is. He's somebody who has a liberal view of the world and a different idea about what the role of the government should be in our society, and that's why I think he is so committed to this notion of raising taxes to try and solve this economic problem, when most of us on the conservative side believe that when you're facing a debt crisis and an economic downturn, you don't want to make government bigger, you make government smaller.
Well, Senator Thune, we only have a few seconds left here, but I could give you a suggestion around your Democratic colleagues in the Senate. You could maybe start dropping how much you missed the reasonable-mindedness of President Clinton when it came to these fiscal issues, and just keep talking about that old Clinton budget, balanced budget nostalgia in your social quarters with your colleagues.
We will, and it'd be nice if we could see some Democrats who would sort of adopt the view that he did. And he was someone who was very practical, very pragmatic, realized that working with Republicans could get some good policy in a divided government. And this president seems to be very tethered to his ideological views and unwilling to acknowledge that this is fundamentally a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Thune from South Dakota. Very, happy to have you on the show. You're a friend of the show. Cut, cap, and balance. You're touting it. I'm touting it. Let's get on board, Democratic senators. The country is not looking for partisanship right now.